Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Constable Claude Chansey, Public Information Officer with the Winnipeg Police Service. Today's press conference deals with a lengthy extortion investigation that began earlier in the year. The type of extortion we will discuss this morning is more commonly referred to as sextortion. After the presentation, we have Sergeant Trevor Thompson of the Winnipeg Police Service's Financial Crime Unit who will be here to answer any questions you may have. We also have as our guest Director of Cybertip.ca, Mr. Stephen Sauer, who will provide some more insight and also be available for questions afterwards. In January 2023, the Winnipeg Police Service's Financial Crime Unit began an investigation when a male in his 20s reported being victim of sextortion. He shared intimate images of himself with an unknown individual online who purported to be a young woman. Once receiving the images, the suspect threatened to share the images online unless he sent him money. The victim e-transferred money to the perpetrator to avoid having his intimate images distributed and did not hear from the suspect again. In February of 2023, the Financial Crimes Unit identified 3 additional victims and charged a male suspect with 4 counts of extortion. A subsequent investigation linked the accused to similar crimes across Canada. With the assistance of Cybertip.ca and other law enforcement agencies, the RCMP, York Regional Police Service, the Hamilton Police Service, and the Halton Police Service, 6 additional male victims were identified within Manitoba, Alberta, Ontario, and Prince Edward Island. Investigators believe these crimes may have international ties as money was transferred overseas. On June 11th, 2023, a 21-year-old male from Winnipeg, Tongun Justin Tongun, was charged with 6 additional counts of extortion, bringing a total to 10. He was released on an undertaking as mandated by the Criminal Code. Sextortion is a form of online blackmail that occurs when someone online threatens to distribute intimate sexual images of a victim unless they pay the suspect. Victims are often teen males and young adults who believe they are communicating with a female to facilitate a relationship or an intimate connection. Almost immediately after receiving the images, the perpetrator threatens to distribute the victim's images online or send them to family, friends, or colleagues. Feeling trapped, the victim fears the embarrassing outcome and agrees to send money to pay off the suspect. Over the last 12 months, Cybertip.ca, which is Canada's tip line for reporting online sexual abuse and exploitation of children, has received more than 3,400 reports from children and young adults who have been targeted, victimized, and sextorted while using online social media platforms. What do you do if this happens to you? If someone threatens to share your intimate images, or if they have already been shared, take the following precautions. Screenshot the online communications and block or deactivate the account. Do not delete the account, as this may later serve as an important investigative tool. Do not pay money, and if you have done so, do not send more money and do not send more images. Stop payments, notify your financial institution, and make a police report online. You can also go to make a report to cybertip.ca, of course. You also have the opportunity to go to needhelpnow.ca if you have been exploited online or your intimate images have been shared. They'll be able to provide you some assistance in removing images if they have been uploaded or shared online and provide emotional support. All the links are available in the news release we've provided today. At this time, I would like to invite the director of cybertip.ca, Mr. Stephen Sauer, to address you and provide some more insight into sextortion. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Sauer. I'm the director of cybertip.ca, which is Canada's national tip line for the reporting of online child sexual exploitation and is operated by the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. So as part of the announcement here today, the Winnipeg Police asked us to provide a picture of the scale of the problem on the national level and international level that we were seeing through the tip line. Here are some sobering numbers. So over the course of the last 12 months, CyberTip has received more than 3,400 reports from victims of sextortion. In the last 6 months, we've seen a near 50% increase in sextortion victims seeking help. This is close to 80 victims a week and more than 11 per day. Also, what we know about these crimes and the nature of what happens is that most victims don't report. This is an underreported crime. Most individuals are trying to deal with this on their own. So the true scale of the problem is much greater than what these numbers suggest. This is why our organization and many other groups are referring to this as a public safety crisis unfolding in our communities. We know from our work with international partners that those committing these crimes are often part of organized criminal networks who have figured out that there's money to be made by manipulating and blackmailing kids and young adults they connect with on social media. The incredible work of the Winnipeg Police on this case is among the first examples that we are aware of here in Canada of law enforcement disrupting the commercial incentive for those engaged in this crime. Briefly, for those who aren't familiar with how these things play out for sextortion, the victims are contacted on a social media service by an offender who pretends to be someone else and engages in sexually charged conversations. Offenders set a trap by manipulating victims into exchanging intimate images of themselves. Almost immediately, the blackmail begins with demands for money under threats to circulate the images online or to the victim's social network. In many cases, the extorters become aggressive and their threatening communications become more relentless in their pursuit of their goal. And well, obviously, offenders go where the kids are, not to the obscure corners of the internet, but to popular social media platforms. We know from cybertip.ca data that 80% of cases involved Instagram and or Snapchat. The aftermath of these types of crimes can have a devastating effect on youth. Some have tragically taken their own lives over this, as we saw last spring with a teenage boy from rural Manitoba. So from a safety and prevention perspective, what advice do we have? Well, we kind of echo exactly what Winnipeg Police has already said. If someone is threatening you to share your nude image or video, stop the communication, cut it off, don't give in to the threats, block them, and never pay money or send additional images. From our experience, we know that the extorters often continue to come back for more once the victim complies. Make sure that you screenshot and save the messages, information about the extorter, like usernames, social media information, and any images or videos that were sent. Contact the police or cybertip.ca for help. In certain cases, CyberTip can work to get the accounts of the extorters disabled and even help to get the distributed images removed from online services. Like Winnipeg Police said, deactivate your social media accounts, but don't delete them because that's important. And if you've paid, make sure you contact your bank and try to cancel the payment, or your credit card provider, or whatever payment provider you're using. Most importantly, seek help. You don't have to deal with this alone. Tell a safe adult, a friend, someone you trust in your life if this has happened to you. From a prevention perspective, it's also important to highlight how frustrated we are that safety advice is the major focus in these situations. Thousands of children and parents we've dealt with over the years are trying to take the right precautions. They know the safety tips. Parents monitor their kids' online activities. They keep up to date with online trends. They're trying to be vigilant. Also, law enforcement stakeholders we work with are so overwhelmed with these types of crimes. We certainly cannot police our way out of these problems. If we want to fundamentally improve online safety, we need regulatory guardrails in place to ensure technology companies are required to prioritize online safety for its end users, especially the most vulnerable ones. That's really the bottom line. We really need governments to come out and to provide legislation that will protect our children and will protect the youth and young adults that are on these platforms, to make sure that there is a duty of care for those that operate these types of platforms. Thank you once again to the Winnipeg Police for their work on this case.
If there's any questions for Director Sauer or for Sergeant Thompson, by all means, we have time.
What are the future steps that are going to be put in place to decrease the number of cases of sextortion?
What are the future steps? Well, I think what we would ideally like to see is that companies really take this seriously. We know that, especially the two companies that I mentioned, Snapchat and Instagram, that they don't have appropriate systems in place to mitigate this from happening on their platforms. We know that they have the tools that can help stop this from happening, or at least prevent it. Even simple messaging on a platform that says that if someone contacts you that you don't know, that's within your contacts, that says that this might be a scam, just be cautious of how you do this, how you connect with this person, that would be an important step, a first step. We know they have data on the back end that connects these users who are extorting kids, and they're not utilizing that to its full extent to ensure that they're not continually creating new accounts to extort kids and young adults on these platforms. So certainly we want to see more from the companies. The other piece we need to see is some legislation, because obviously a voluntary framework is not working in this space. We know that the companies are not taking this seriously, so governments really need to start regulating in this space, and I think that's really the next step here, is we're going to see governments come down with legislation that ensures that the companies are held to account when something happens on their platforms.
So would that be like compelling legislation, compelling them to hand over data, that sort of thing? What would that legislation look like?
Well, I think the legislation would look like, putting protections in place for youth that are on their platforms, ensuring that they have, that they take it seriously, that they have things in place that don't allow the interaction between youth and adults on their platforms, especially unknown adults, right? If you had some sort of mechanism that didn't allow that first connection point, that would be essential. So making sure that those types of regulatory frameworks are in place. If you consider what we do in the space of toys for kids, there are 10 plus regulations in place for toys. When it comes to social media and ensuring that these platforms are safe, there's zero. There are really no regulatory frameworks right now in place for kids on these platforms.
Stephen, you said that this was one of the first examples of law enforcement disrupting the flow of money in a case like this. How rare is it that police are able to identify an accused person and then lay charges?
Well, I actually don't have the answer to that necessarily. What I do know is that from our international partners is that there is an international component to this, which causes some complexity in terms of the investigative side of this. But like I said, this is one of the first examples we've seen in Canada where there's been the disruption of the financial incentive for this crime. Whether or not that's happening on an international scale, we can only say that our partners would know that. When you look at the RCMP or some of the other international agencies that might be involved in this type of crime in the U.S., they might have more information on that.
You spoke to this a little bit, but can you just touch on more about the emotional and mental impact this can have on victims?
Yeah, I think when you think about what happens in these cases and the threats to distribute to family and friends after someone makes a mistake, they provide an image. They think it's in the context of a closed relationship, and then it's their threats to share that with the wider network of friends. I think there's a huge emotional impact. Often kids coming into us talk about how they see their life as being ruined. I think there is such shame associated with the distribution of that type of material that it's really difficult to get over that in the moment for them. And so that's one of the things that we do at the Canadian Centre for Child Protection is we will support youth through these situations. We have a whole support team that will walk them through what steps they can take. We'll connect with them on a regular basis to ensure that they're connected to the right supports in their life. So we really want to get out ahead of that and ensure that they, that they are feeling safe and that they can manage through the traumatic experience of having that distributed, or even if it's not distributed, the threats are enough to cause trauma.
Can we ask Sergeant Thompson a few questions about the investigation?
Absolutely.
So 10 victims in total. The first man was in his 20s. Do you have the ages of the other 9 victims?
Young adults. Yeah, young adults.
So under 30 or?
Under 30.
All
I
under
mean,
30?
yeah.
Okay.
So, should be clear, so the 3 additional victims identified in February, were they also in Winnipeg or elsewhere?
Abroad.
Abroad.
Yeah, so the victims range anywhere from Alberta to PEI, like Claude had mentioned. And, I'll echo what Stephen said. The underreporting and the lack of reporting becomes problematic in the investigations, because once you have one victim who's reported in Winnipeg, it takes investigative work to go back and figure out who these other victims are. And in most of the cases, the ones that we dealt with in this investigation, they had not reported to their respective police agencies.
So there was one Manitoban in total?
That was the initial one.
Oh, so there's 2?
I believe there was 2 in Manitoba, but ranging from Alberta to PEI, the total of 10.
Can you say how police were able to identify an accused in this case?
Investigation, diligent investigation by the investigators in the financial crime unit. Again, the jumping off point for that investigation is the actual reporting. Had that initial victim not reported to the Winnipeg Police Service, we wouldn't be standing here today. So I will echo what Stephen said and say that if there's anybody watching here today, and this has happened to you, or you know somebody this has happened to, the importance of reporting cannot be understated.
Do you think there are more victims connected to this certain accused person?
Likely. I can't get into substantial detail. The investigation is still ongoing. Like I said, as you do the backwards work, you almost have to reverse engineer the investigation that you're doing to locate these victims, and it's problematic when they haven't reported to their initial police agency. So we do thank the other agencies that we reached out to that provided us this assistance in this investigation.
So, in terms of the transferring of money, that's, at least for the Winnipeg victim, financial institution to another Canadian financial institution, is that how it works, or is it more?
It's layered, for sure, and this is very common in any type of scam or fraud that we deal with, especially in an extortion. There's multiple hops to the funds. I believe Claude mentioned in the release that the ultimate destination of the funds is typically overseas, and that's what we're seeing in this instance as well. So very sophisticated, organized criminal networks operating outside of Canadian borders, targeting our youth.
And you believe that this man was part of one of those networks?
Yep.
Are you able to say roughly how much money was extorted out of these 10 victims?
I don't want to get lost in the dollar figure because it's not a monetary thing for the victims. The monetary effects in the grand scale of things in other frauds that we see could be minimal compared to other types of cryptocurrency scams or anything like that. It's not the money that's the issue. I mean, at the end of the day, the criminal organizations, their goal is financial incentive, financial reward. But the damage to the victims here is emotional, psychological, and that's what we should really focus on here.
Are there any victims who are under 18?
I don't know if, there are a couple that are under 18. I don't know the specific numbers.
Okay, so
Okay,
some teenagers then?
Yeah, so like as Stephen would say, anywhere, youth who are on these platforms, right? Anybody that's, a young teenager up to young adults and even middle-aged adults use these platforms extensively.
All boys or men then?
In this case, it's all males.
Based on the presser, I think this is this a first for WPS to make an arrest in extortion cases, or?
I don't know if it's a first. I think it's a good first step moving forward. I believe there's probably been other investigations. We work in the financial crime unit, typically in the fraud area. Youths that are exploited are dealt with through the counter-exploitation unit. We do partner with them. It just so happens the initial complaint of this one was an adult male, which kind of led us to take the lead on this. So.
But certainly not a common thing to make an arrest in this kind of case?
We're hoping it becomes more common. These investigations, as the release indicates, are lengthy, they're complex, they have international ties, they deal extensively with social media platforms, third parties that hold information, banks, money transfer services, so there's a lot that goes into it, right? And then once you start getting into it, And this one is not unique when you start having to figure out who the victims are and reaching out proactively and trying to decipher kind of the true extent of what has actually happened and the scope of the victimization.
Did any of the other victims come forward, or how were they identified
In our investigation or in general?
in this investigation?
In general, through investigative techniques, I can't disclose exactly what that was, but we were able to determine contact information for people who we believed were being victimized. And then upon reaching out to those specific agencies, and in some cases to those people individually, we're able to determine that that was the case.
Okay, so the other victims, the other 9, say, didn't necessarily come forward to make the
Not all,
complaint
no.
like the first person in Winnipeg
Nope.
did?
No, reporting, very underreported, these offenses, right?
You've mentioned the need for government regulations. Are there any measures going to be taking place at schools or to help raise awareness for the children to avoid these problems that could take place?
Yeah, I think maybe that might be a better question for Stephen.
Sure.
Yeah, this is actually something that we've been talking to schools about for quite a while now. We have a program called Kids in the Know, which is in many schools across the country, including here in Manitoba, in almost all the school divisions in Manitoba. So within that program, we do talk specifically about the issue of sextortion. It's one of our education mandates, is to provide that to youth and give them the steps that they need to really help keep them safe when they've encountered someone online that it seems like an odd situation or behaviors are odd. We give them the tools that they can to ensure that their safety is at the utmost. So.
And should we increase the quantity of those meetings or the amount of times we talk about this?
I think that would be ideal. Certainly, that's one of the things that we try as an organization, is to try to get the message out as often as possible. We do things like cybertip.ca alerts, which send basically technology trends or trends in online exploitation to family members, to individuals who sign up for cybertip.ca alerts. And within those alerts, we've sent out a number of messages about sextortion and different tactics that we were seeing over the years. So signing up for something like that is important. And just getting the message out that you just need to be cautious about who you're in contact with, and about who you're sharing images with on your social media. So absolutely, we want that messaging front and center for kids, so that they're aware that they can take the necessary steps to ensure that they're safe on these platforms.
And what can parents do to better protect their children?
Well, I think parents, making sure that they are engaged with their youth about these conversations, having a conversation about what sextortion looks like, really diving into that. I know sometimes that can be a difficult conversation, and we have things that are available for them to start that conversation, to really get it going with their youth. And talking about technology in general from an early age, because we're often giving our kids devices at early ages, so we should be talking about what that technology can do and how they should be using it, and really just keeping that ongoing dialogue with your child is really important, because often they'll feel comfortable coming to you and talking about any situation that they've encountered. So keeping that open-ended conversation with them is really, really important, because there's a comfort level for them to seek help when something goes wrong.
Just a question for Trevor, actually. I know you mentioned that you believe the accused may have been part of some international criminal network. Is it possible that there are victims outside Canada too, connected to the same group?
Yeah, I think it'd be fair to say, and Cybertip would probably echo this, that this is not unique to Canada.
Anything more? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for attending today. This concludes our news conference.